A doubleheader of game twos on this Monday night around the NBA playoffs. Our coach, James Young, JY, here to give you that scouting report and his breakdowns for each of our two games on this Monday. First, inside the Garden, it's the New York Knicks and the Detroit Pistons. Then, in the nightcap at altitude, it's the Nuggets and the Clippers. And JY, the story for this game two tonight inside MSG is very much the idea of resolve. What bounce back does Detroit have? And how do they feel about the disaster in the fourth quarter? Up by 8 early on in the fourth to see the Knicks go on that 21-0 run. How do the Knicks feel about it as well? Hey, we didn't play the greatest game from start to finish, but at our best, we can beat the best, especially in the moments that matter most. So, JY, 7-point spread in favor of the Knicks tonight now for game number 2 inside the Garden. What do you think we see in the response to game 1 from both of these sides?
Well, I think if you are Detroit, you have to find a way to get Cade Cunningham going. He just looked really passive, almost, I don't want to say scared of the moment, just kind of unsure of himself a little bit. You need to continue to get better play or good play from your veterans. The problem is that one veteran, I think, is going to play well, one does not. The one I think is going to play well is going to be Malik Beasley. I think he's not scared of the moment. He's a tough veteran, not afraid to take the big shot, hit a bunch of threes early on. I think his points popped up 14.5, gone over 3 of the last 4 versus the Knicks. I don't trust, honestly, Tobias Harris to have another bounce back spot the way he did. For the Knicks, you didn't play well in the first 3 quarters. Jalen Brunson was pedestrian, and you didn't really take advantage of Cat. If you watch the matchup closely, folks, Cat was being guarded by Tobias Harris. They put Jalen Duren on Josh Hart. If I'm Tibbs, I go inside or get the ball to Cat at the high post where it's one drive, one dribble, get to the rim. Cat over 23.5 points, over 10 in the last 15 games, 3-5 versus Detroit. Just got to 23 last one. I think big performance out of Cat. Knicks get the win and the cover.
Knicks need the big win tonight, get that 2-0 series lead, get that comfort back, or is it a young Pistons team that takes a 1-1, advantage per se back to Detroit and say, you know what, home court advantage is now ours. But the big series for me, one of my favorite series that I've been watching to start, is that's the Clippers and the Nuggets. Overtime in game number 1, I thought the Clippers should have won that game. They didn't here. So talk to me about the Clippers and the Nuggets, and a slight favorite now for the Clippers at -1.5 in this game and a total of 218. What do the Clippers need to do to send this back to Los Angeles 1-1? Or is it the Denver Nuggets for you, escaping game number 1 and saying, you know what, might as well win game number 2 at home as well?
I thought, guys, this was going to be the typical zigzag series where you're just going to go bing, bing, bing. You're just going to bounce back and forth. Why? Because they're just so evenly matched, right? The stats kind of line up. It was a game that I think the Clippers let go, turnovers, big shot by Russ, big defensive plays in overtime. And they just kind of let the rope go. I think Kawhi is going to be far more aggressive for the entire game. And I like what I see out of the Clippers. I think the Clippers steal the game, and they go back 1-1. This is going 7. I don't think it's going to be 2-0. And I think the difference between the Clippers and Detroit is I think the Clippers blow that game, and they're a veteran team that can respond and come back. Detroit hasn't been in this spot before, so they blow it. Now, if it starts to get tight, they start to tighten up again. I like the Clippers on the money line to get the win and get this back to L.A. 1-1.
It's what we see in playoff series, and we see it represented in the odds. One game, one result, night over night, can completely flip what the odds makers expect of who is going to win that series and how long it might take. And, JY, we're seeing it here on full display for the Clippers and Nuggets series, the 4-5 split in the Western Conference. We expected to be highly competitive. Game number 1 went to OT, decided by just 2 points. And one thing that stood out, the Clippers flipped to a series outright favorite entering game 1, despite being the road underdog in that opening game. The Clippers down 0-1 and on the road, a road favorite now in game 2 against Denver, and yet the series underdog as the Nuggets are the favorites. This is what you try to compare and make sense of from the odds perspective as you go through each and every one of these playoff series. JY, as always, on this Monday, we appreciate the time greatly. Thank you for being here on the early line. We'll talk plenty more throughout the NBA playoffs. You want to hit a quick and early fadeaway before we take this to the break? Whoa!
I mean, okay. Can I run? Can I run clock? Can I
You've
be
got a
tips?
dribble
Can I be
album.
tips? And
Spin
just
it.
give the ball
Spin
to
it.
Brunson and let him dribble it and clear it
Carmelo.
out. No, tips. Move the ball. I'm gonna give it back to Ben. I'm hitting it early tonight. Bang.
Well, that's going to go in, and then we'll inbound
Right.
it there.
No,
Jay
no,
Wise,
The other team,
always.
Five second call.
too many
5 second call.
Too much time on the clock.
We welcome you to hour number 3, our third and final live right here on this Monday on the early line on SportsGrid. He is Donnie Rightside. I am Ben Stevens. One more hour to go. We preview a doubleheader of Game 2s tonight in the NBA playoffs. Game number 2 inside the Mecca in the world's most famous arena, the New York Knicks taking on the Detroit Pistons. And in maybe our most competitive Game 1 and in maybe our most competitive opening round series, Game number 2 tonight at Mile High. It's the Nuggets and the Clippers. Our thoughts on both of those games, hearing from the people about how both of those game number 2s play out in plenty of MLB previews as well on this Monday. A very early game on this Monday as well, DRS, in just over an hour inside Fenway Park. It is Marathon Day in Boston. It is Patriots Day in Beantown, and thus the early start between a pair of Soxes. The red and the white do battle today in Fenway.
Yeah, tradition out there. It should be fun to watch that play. It's a good way to start a Monday post-holiday. So most people waking up a little bit groggy, a little stomachs full from eating a lot yesterday on Easter Sunday. The perfect way to sit back and digest is with us right here on the SportsGrid Network. We'll hit those games as well. But I am looking forward to tonight to the NBA action. 2 good games and 2 competitive game number 1s where maybe we thought the opposite teams that won the game should have actually lost the game, if you will, where the Pistons should have probably beat the Knicks and then the Clippers should have beat the Nuggets. That didn't happen. Will those roles reverse tonight? That's what we're asking the people.
DRS, it's a really good point, by the way, because in both of those game 1s, the team that ended up on the losing end seemed for a lot of the game, or at least a good portion of it, even late, that they were going to win it outright. Both teams on the road, unable to do just that. The Clippers and the Nuggets go to OT, and Denver edges out LA, 112-110 in that extra session in game number 1. Of course, as we have shared, the Knicks, a 21-zip run midway through the fourth quarter to snatch the game back from Detroit and win game number 1 inside Madison Square Garden. What resolve do we see for the teams that came up short? How much do those fourth quarter rallies inspire the teams that came out on top? Basically, our question to you as we ask, who wins the doubleheader? Put them together. Moneyline parlay tonight in game number 2 around the NBA postseason. The question to all of you in Fade the Public. Some pretty close calls in terms of the voting in the Fade the Public poll at SportsGrid on Twitter. Your 4 options, of course, Nuggets, Pistons, Nuggets, Knicks, Clippers, Pistons, Clippers, Knicks, as we look at where things stand. And DRS, most of the public, more than 32%, backing the teams at home tonight, the Nuggets and the Knicks. Only 30.5%, Clippers and the Knicks, but a lot of belief perhaps in the Knicks being the better side in front of Detroit. That would follow the odds. New York, a 7-point home favorite tonight. LA, actually a slight 1.5 favorite on the road at altitude.
Hey, I would love to see both of these series go back to the respective cities 1-1, makes it more competitive, extend those series out, gives us more entertainment and more fun to talk about. But my vote actually went to the Knicks, which would be a 2-0 series lead, but to the Clippers, which would be that 1-1 heading back to Los Angeles. And that was right now, it's coming in at 30.5% of the votes coming in. You take a look at the Knicks and the Nuggets, 32%. And then you take a look at the Pistons and the Clippers, 24.6%. So you do have that even keel of these games should be competitive tonight and taking out of what you saw for game number 1. Because, yes, you see the price point is much higher for the New York Knicks. They're favored at the Garden. They should win. But game number 1 wasn't so much what that final score was. It was just a complete collapse of the Detroit Pistons. So we figure they're more into the series than, let's just say, a 7-point dog or so for tonight's action. And the same thing with the Clippers. Probably should have won game number 1. Didn't, went to overtime and lost that game. Maybe a bounce back is in order. So for me, I went Knicks, because I do think they're the better team over the Pistons and they're more heavily favored. But I think the Clippers can even up that series. So slight fade, I guess, for me, at only 30% of the votes coming in. I went that direction.
DRS, I went with the second or the third most selected option, that being the Pistons and the Clippers. More so just because I hope that with my plus 2.5 games bet on the Pistons that they can get this to 6. Stealing one on the road, having a golden opportunity to do so in the opening game of the set would certainly help in doing just that. But again, it makes a lot of sense from the odds perspective. The Clippers are a slight favorite for game number 2 to sort of get a lot of that love from the public voting. The Pistons are still a 7-point road underdog in game number 2. That is the question, though, Donnie. It's really what it comes down to. Yeah. What do the Pistons believe after coughing up an opportunity to win game number 1? Are they looking at it glass half full? Hey, we had a lead at the end of 3 quarters. Hey, we had an 8-point lead in the 4th quarter inside Madison Square Garden against this Knicks team. Or will the lasting thought of coughing and stumbling down the stretch as they watch that lead evaporate on a 21-0 run? Not even like the Knicks kind of fought their way back over the good majority of the 9 minutes that remained in regulation, but just in an instant took a double-digit lead after being down by an 8-point deficit on that 21-0 run in about 4.5 minutes. How does Detroit bounce back? What is the resolve out of a young playoff team that, because of their inexperience, I think we saw what we did in game number 1? That is the main question, DRS, but still, the odds makers backing the Knicks. 7-point spread tonight in favor of New York.
Yeah, we'll see where that line ends up by game time once the public sort of gets to hammer that later in tonight around 7 o'clock or so. That total listed at 220.5, and as we talked about some of these games staying under the total, what's the ammo coming? And also understand this too. You sort of have that feeling out process in game number 1. Game number 2 comes there, game number 3, game number 4. You're knowing just about every offensive set that these teams have, and also you're starting to ratchet up the pressure. No more nerves for the Detroit Pistons saying, hey, it's a Garden, it's a big spot, it's the playoffs. Hey, we collapsed in the 4th quarter. Maybe they learned from that environment here and can apply that tonight, because also understand this from a handicapping perspective. We're just asking the public, just based on the money line, who's going to win this game. But then again, you could still take the Pistons, lose this game, and still cover the spread. Now, granted, you entered the 4th quarter of the last game with almost a double-digit lead, getting 6 to 7.5 points. And not only did you not win the basketball game outright, you didn't even get the cover, which is a double sting right now. So we'll see how the effort is. But I expect that the Pistons are going to hang around again. This isn't going to be a first quarter of Knicks 28, Pistons 17. That's going to be hard to dig out of. You expect a spirited performance from the Pistons if they're buying in tonight enough to send this 1-1 back to Detroit. And again, the Clippers and the Nuggets, that just explains itself. 2 veteran-laden teams, 1 team recently removed from a championship, 1 team saying we're healthy, we can finally get there. And also understand this, you might have a referendum series with the Clippers here, Ben. We talk about players getting traded away. Just to say the Clippers are healthy and this doesn't work out. Are you adding more pieces, or are you just saying this just isn't going to work at this point?
Yeah, DRS, because if they're all healthy, James Harden, Kawhi Leonard, Ivica Zubac, who was great in game number 1. We need our guy Big Will, Norman Powell, to hit 3 made threes, not just 2. You have the pieces in place, if remaining healthy, to make not only a win in this opening round, but a deep playoff run around the Western Conference. Quickly on Detroit and New York here. We'll talk about this game a little bit later on, but just in comparing the odds, New York was a 6.5, 7-point favorite for game number 1. They end up covering because of that dramatic 4th quarter run. Total of 220.5, skies over. One of 2 opening round, opening games that we saw go to the over this weekend. Just 2 of the 8 pushed to the over in New York and in Cleveland. Total remains the same from game 1 to game 2. 220 to hook in the opener, 220 in a hook now tonight. Despite going to overtime, DRS, at altitude on Saturday, total still stayed under 224.5, finishing 112-110. That total between the Nuggets and the Clippers tonight has dropped by 6 points, nearly 2 possessions at 218.5. Something to monitor as we see those odds shift game to game.
Yeah, maybe you should be more acclimated to the high altitude there, specifically for the Clippers being there a couple days as opposed to just one 16 to 18-hour jaunt. So I'm interested to see how they come out in the first quarter of that game as well, but I expect big things from the Clippers. You'll know a lot about the series. I don't think the Clippers come back from down 2-0 or 0-2, I should say, in the series. They need that game in Denver to get that back on their side.
We'll preview those games a little bit later on in this third and final hour. Two game number twos on this Monday night in the NBA playoffs in two great spots between two dramatic game ones in each of these two opening round series. DRS, we start inside the world's most famous arena, Madison Square Garden, for game number two between the New York Knicks and the Detroit Pistons. As we have shared a multitude of times here in game number one, the Pistons led by 8 early in the fourth quarter, 9:16 remaining before the New York Knicks started a 21-0 run to take a double-digit lead with about 4.5 minutes remaining in regulation. Just like that, the lead the Pistons had built up had vanish. A team that really did not have a lot of playoff experience saw that lead vanish right in front of them. How does Detroit respond? How can New York continue the momentum it found in that fourth quarter of our opening game on Saturday night? 7-point spread in favor of the Knicks, total at 220.5. Same total live right now on the FanDuel Sportsbook for that closing number we saw in game number one. In fact, DRS, game to game, despite New York winning in dramatic fashion, the odds really have remained the same. What do we see tonight inside MSG?
We're hoping for a bounce back for the Pistons, right? So we get a good extended series, but it's also going to be the make of that team and how their coach gets them prepared to play in this game, because understanding the way you lose sometimes is worse than just taking the loss itself. You know, it just didn't have it, lost by 25 points. Let's see if he can rebound and get back under it. You should have won game number one. So the psychology coming into the first quarter, you think Detroit is going to want to start fast and say, you know what, there is no hangover. We're going to be here about business. Or is it the New York Knicks that say, boy, we didn't play all that well over the first three quarters. We finally found our groove defensively and offensively in the fourth quarter. Let's extend that into the first half here and not give the Detroit Pistons any life here to think that they can actually come back into the series, and we'll take that 2-0 series lead back to take on the Pistons in Detroit. Having said that, there's 2 points I look at, because you know me in game number one, I really liked Jalen Brunson to go over the 27.5 points. He hit that, goes for 30 again. Hot players here staying on the mark, because I don't think this game is going to slow down per se. And Brunson, the only reason why I only scored 30, low 30s, he started really slow in that game. If he was cooking early, you might have been looking at a 40-plus point effort for him. So I expect to come back at a 28.5 number. It's minus 102 right now in the FanDuel Sportsbook from the opposite side. Like Tobias Harris had a great performance in game number one. He's going to need to step up in a similar fashion. He goes mid-20s game number one. Now you see him at 15.5 at a plus 104 price. They're sticking that there as like a buyer beware, but I got to tell you, I'm back in on Tobias Harris tonight. I love good performances in game-to-game basis, because I'm always under the belief that professional athletes aren't like, whew, got a good game here. Let me in game number two not press my luck down. They knew you're always going to take more shots and continue that hot hand in game number two. So 2-player prospects for me, Brunson as well as Tobias Harris. But in this game, the 7 points, I got to tell you, I sort of feel the Pistons again. Like, I think they can rebound from that performance and say, guys, we were the better team until we fell into a 21-0 hole. We can hang around and at least get the cover of around 7 points here.
Yeah, DRS, I think it's a great point. And again, had you just backed the Pistons getting points in game number one, not only did you see Detroit lose outright, they did not even cover, losing that game by 11. One of our 2 overs of our 8 opening games in the opening round of the NBA playoffs inside MSG on Saturday because of that dramatic Knicks rally. Let's talk a couple of those player props. To your point, DRS, 28.5, the highest number tonight from a points perspective for New York's Jalen Brunson. He had 34, a big part of that run and that spurt for New York in the fourth quarter. But we remember Jalen Brunson last postseason as well. Not just the amount of points that he scored. He had at least 29 in 8 of the 13 games New York played in its 2 series last postseason, but just the absolute volume that would allow him to get 30, 35, 40 plus points. We saw that in game number one as well. JY mentioned earlier the response for AnthonyTowns. 23.5 is his points prop. DRS for me, despite posting a double-double in game number one, the first playoff game of his NBA career, I think Cade Cunningham needs to be better tonight for Detroit if they are going to steal game two on the road inside Madison Square Garden. 21 points, 12 dimes in game number one, but just 8 of 21 from the floor and 1 of 4 from beyond the arc. 27.5. The points prop tonight for Cade. If he can get over that, that's to me how Detroit wins this game on the road.
Yeah, and you take a look at the made player three-point shots here on the FanDuel Sportsbook. I was talking about Brunson over 2.5 three-point shots made. Not really an indicator of his game because he doesn't shoot them with volume, but he does shoot daggers. But I think your correlation, Ben, does make a lot of sense here. If you're saying if Cade Cunningham's going to get 30 points tonight, what are the chances he does it without making 2 3-point shots? And it's a doable number. Over 1.5 at a minus 130 price point. If you think he's going to have a good game, he better knock down a couple daggers from three-point range. So I think that one adds up.
Yeah.
Looks like a decent three-point market tonight as well. AnthonyTowns over 1.5 at a plus 108 number. Like, I don't know if we're getting a ton of points tonight, but I don't think we're going to get a game that's 95 to 85 like we saw with the Golden State Warriors and the Houston Rockets. I think the three-point shots will go down, and also a correlation from a guy like Cade Cunningham, I think makes some sense.
Malik Beasley, who had 6 triples for Detroit off the bench in game number 1 on Saturday. His number 3.5, the over a hefty amount of juice at minus 144. Our nightcap tonight at altitude, it's the Denver Nuggets and the LA Clippers. Of course, DRS, a great game in game number 1, an overtime thriller in the opening game on Saturday in Mile High. Denver edging out LA 112-110, winning in overtime. A total of 224, and the hook stays under. The Clippers did squander an early lead, but did cover as a 3.5-point road dog. Never did we see the advantage on either side get the double digits in the second half. We expected this series to perhaps be the most competitive of any of them around the association in round number 1 of the playoffs. And Donnie, tonight, 18 cents of difference. But the favored number in favor of the road team, that would be the LA Clippers. Total stands at 218 and a hook, minus 118, the money line number for the Clippers. How close will this game be in game number 2 at altitude?
Could be just as close as that point spread right now, within a bucket or two, just like we saw that overtime game just a few nights ago. I'm looking for a bounce-back performance for the Clippers where it's a loss that you expected to get, but it wasn't a devastating loss like we blew a 10-point lead with 6 or 5 minutes to go in this game. It was nip and tuck all the way through, and I expect the Stars to have a bounce-back performance. So if we're looking at the total itself, 218, I actually still lean towards the over in that, and so that buy down here, how low can that possibly go towards game time? If I'm looking at the Clippers minus 1.5, you can't go down 0-2. They understand that, but I do think their superstars in kind will step up. You take a look at the FanDuel Sportsbook on some of the numbers that are posted back. Kawhi Leonard, 24.5 points. James Harden, 23.5 points. Ivica Zubac, 17.5 points. If I had to go and say, you know what's one player you expect to say, this is a game that I absolutely have to have? It's Kawhi Leonard for me. Step it up here. 24.5, I'll go over the total there. I need 25 plus points from my superstar player here. James Harden, he can get to the mid-20s as well, but I need Kawhi to step up. This is the game that he must provide. I'm the superstar. I've won a championship before. We're down 0-1 in the series. We can't go down 0-2. Give me the rock.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you looked at it, DRS, in game number 1, they got a lot of production, did LA. They had James Harden. They had Kawhi Leonard. Ivica Zubac had 21 and 13. Nearly a triple-double for Nikola Jokic. 29 points, 12 boards, and 9 dimes. Of course, he is going to approach that number always. Keep an eye on Zubac. Once again, the rebounding prop tonight for the big man for LA stands currently at 12.5. And Donnie, much like we saw in game 1, that was fascinating. The Clippers were the slight series outright favorite, and yet Denver was favored to win game number 1. They did. The Nuggets now a slight series outright favorite, but the Clippers a favorite to win game number 2. We expect this series, maybe above all else, to shift each and every time we see a game, each and every day in between. That's what the odds makers are anticipating ahead of game 2 tonight.
Yeah, exciting too. And this should be a long series. We might even be able to go to 7. It's just that from a Clippers perspective, boy, you want to get one of these first 2 games in Denver so you can sort of turn the tide and say, we'll sweep you in LA. It doesn't matter about elevation as long as you take care of business in game number 6 when we get back that far. I'm interested to see how they play out. But again, this game is built on superstars. I don't expect Kawhi Leonard to shoot the ball 9 times tonight. I'm expecting 15, 16 shots here and also a couple free throws. Give me the over. Let's go.
More of the prop perspective for the NBA playoffs next. The prop perspective to start off a new week, entering the second games around the NBA playoffs, even a couple of game 2s tonight in the Stanley Cup postseason as well, and some Major League Baseball on a Monday. So if we're doing all of that, that means the jack of all trades is here. It is TV Tom Vecchio of SportsGrid. live right here on the Early Line. Vecchio, as always, hope the weekend was great. Thanks for being here to start off this new week on TEL.
Thanks for having me. Weekend was great. We saw some great NBA action outside of the Thunder. I love seeing low-scoring games in the playoffs. You know, a lot of people don't like seeing it. I thought the Warriors game last night was awesome. I don't want to see games end 130 to 125. If you want to see that, go watch the Hornets and the Wizards in the middle of December. It's the middle of April. We want to see the best basketball. Let's get to it.
Absolutely, Vecchio. That's playoff basketball. Defense wins championships, or so I have been told. So let's focus on our 2 game 2s that we have tonight. We start inside Madison Square Garden. It's the Knicks and the Pistons. Vecchio, as we've been laying it out, the theme for game 2 is the resolve, really, for both sides. Detroit from the crushing 21-0 run that New York went on in the fourth quarter. The Knicks now playing a great game in full, trying to use that momentum. How do they respond in game number 2? 7-point spread in favor of the Knicks. Very close to what the number was for game number 1. 220.5 now is that over-under. Same total as the opening game on Saturday. So then what do we see in game number 2?
Well, something that was backing the Pistons in game 1 at +7, I thought it was looking good for a while. That all came crashing down. And ultimately, I really like the under in this game. And this has to be a correction on the Pistons side of things. Not just from them, but from the game environment overall. The Knicks took 93 field goal attempts. The Pistons were up at 86. The Knicks were over 50% from the field. The Pistons were just under 50%. Both teams right above and right below 40% from 3. Way too much offense. And frankly, those 21 points pushes the game over, not just by themselves, but in order for the Pistons to eliminate or prevent that from happening again, it's like, okay, we need to control things. We are a young team. We saw that happen in game 1. We need to learn from those mistakes and reel things in. Control the ball, give it to Cade Cunningham, slow the offense down, and that will just eliminate possessions overall. So I do like how the Pistons played, let's call it 90% of the game, 80% of the game, whatever you want to say. Yeah. And they just need to learn from those mistakes and have those adjustments game to game. And I think that will kind of prevent the game from being pushed over. So I like under 221.5.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see the psychology there that the Pistons have coming right out of the gate in that first quarter after letting that game slip away in the fourth quarter. Or the Knicks, hey, this is our home court advantage. We came back. We didn't play all that well. Fourth quarter closed out. We sort of extend that lead in the first quarter to not give the Pistons any hope. We'll find out how that one plays out. I'll tell you one game that has a lot of hope for the rest of the series and a long series. That's game number 2 tonight. That's the Clippers and the Nuggets at 10 p.m. Eastern. A -1.5 point favorite here, Tom, for the Clippers, and a total of 217.5. So another low total that we're listing here in elevation. The Clippers and the Nuggets. Is it even before they're leaving, or is it a 2-0 series lead for the Nuggets?
It's even before they're leaving. And as you guys were talking about in the previous segment, like, this is just a spot for the Clippers to bounce back. Like, they didn't play terribly at all. I would expect a bounce back game from Kawhi, Donnie, as you were alluding to in the last segment. It just has to be a well-rounded effort. And again, they didn't blow a lead. I want to say they kind of got away with one. They maybe lost it with the Westbrook 3, whatever it might be. But they're a balanced team. They're head-to-head. There's a coin flip game between them and the Nuggets. So I'm on their money line already, just to be clear. I am on the Clippers. I have this series going over 5.5 games. I don't know who wins it, but it's going to be a long series. This is not going to be a 4-1 or 4-0 series by any means. Just take the Clippers. They even it up. Then we can look at game 3 once they're back in L.A.
Yeah. Overtime in game number 1. Never a double-digit lead on either side for the entirety of our third and fourth quarters or into the extra portion following regulation. We expect this series to be tight. It's what we saw in game 1. It's probably what we are going to see tonight in game number 2.